Crash Course Astronomy. I am your co-host Rita Ardis, and I will be pushing you through this long journey of stellar evolution. So make sure to pay deep attention. This Crash Course video is brought to you by Cox's Smokers Outlet.
Hello, my name is Kendall Rail. I will be your second co-host, and I will be pulling you through this journey as well.
Let's begin. Stellar evolution is the description of how stars change over time. Although stars don't change as much throughout the years, we notice the biggest changes looking through billions and billions of years. We would notice how stars are born, how they age, and how they eventually die. It is possible to study stellar evolution because of the plethora of stars in our galaxies that scientists observe through stages of their lives. This way, astronomers can build a picture of this stellar evolution. Surprisingly, most things in the sky, like stars, nebulae, and galaxies, barely change at all during a human lifetime. There is one star, however, that does appear to change on timescales we can observe. Those stars are called variable stars. The basic notion of astronomy is that stars change over time. They start off as gas of interstellar gas and dust. They shine by their own light created through nuclear fusion of hydrogen in their cores, and eventually, like us human beings, they run out of fuel and die. Instead of being buried, stars' remains can be taken up into new generation of stars, repeating the process again and again and again. To classify stars so that we know the difference between one another and why they occur, we try to use quantitative measurements of their properties. There are many characteristics that we observed. Two of the most important of the characteristics are mass and age. Ultimately, the mass determines how much energy the star can produce and how quickly the star can produce the energy, and the age of a star tells you how far along it is in its evolution. Now, there are also two other important characteristics, and those are luminosity and temperature. Two very important astronomers during the 20th century, Ehnard Hertzsprung and Henry Norris Russell, discovered an important observation of characteristics of a star. They realized that when you plot the brightness of individual stars versus their spectral type or color, the stars lie in a defined space on the graph. Cool, right? This is called the Hertzsprung-Russell diagram. Stars would be found in different parts of the diagram depending upon their masses and their ages. Furthermore, as a star gets older, it changes in brightness and color in a very predictable way. And that stars of different masses change in very different ways. As you can see, the low temperature and low brightness are the white dwarfs. The mid to high temp and low to high brightness is the main sequence. The high temperature and high brightness are the giants and supergiants. As I mentioned before, each of them appear on specific parts of the graph based on their temperature and luminosity, making it easier to compare the stars to each other. Depending on its initial mass, every star goes through specific evolutionary stages, dictated by its internal structure and how it produces energy. Each of these stages corresponds to a change in the temperature and luminosity of the star, which can be seen to move to different regions on the HR diagram as it evolves. This reveals the true power of the HR diagram and importance. Astronomers can know a star's internal structure and evolutionary stage simply by determining its position in the diagram.
Thank you for all that information, Rita. Now, let's break down the life of a star. When stars are born, they form from a gravitational collapse of cool, dense molecular clouds. As it collapses, it fragments into smaller regions, which then contract in order to form the stellar core. Now, have you ever looked at the night sky and found the constellations Taurus? How about Orion? These popular constellations are home to what we call star-forming regions. Essentially, these are just regions where the previous process occurred. Although they hold the youngest stars, they do hold some very important variable stars. Once the young protostar has grown and collected all the gas and dust it can, it may be bright enough to burn hydrogen at its core, producing light.
This is what Kendall was talking about earlier when a star is born. Much prettier than a human being born, let me tell you that.
At this point, it has become a zero-age main sequence star. The main sequence is defined as the time a star spends burning hydrogen at its core. The amount of time a star spends in this stage varies. For example, our sun is on the main sequence and will remain there for 9 to 10 billion years. Stars change very little once they're on the main sequence. The core slowly converts hydrogen to helium and releases energy in the process. However, there are two problems with trying to observe these changes. One problem is that it can take millions or billions of years to become apparent, and these changes happen deep inside of the star, so we can't actually see them take place.
This is what a star looks like while it is in main sequence. Currently, it is burning hydrogen from its core.
Now, you may be asking yourself, if we can't see the inside of stars, how do we know what's happening? Well, to study the interior of Earth, we use seismology, which is the study or observation of sound waves. So, for the stars, we use astroseismology, which is essentially measuring the vibrations based on how the brightness differs on different parts of the stars and how it changes over time. By the way, we call these vibrations pulsations, and our very own sun has thousands of pulsations at any given time, although you cannot see it with the naked eye. So what happens after the main sequence, you may be wondering? After the star has converted all of its hydrogen to helium, it is done in the main sequence and is ready to become a red giant. When it becomes a red giant, its diameter expands, its luminosity increases, and its temperature decreases.
As Kendall just explained, this shows the process of a main sequence star becoming a red giant star.
Now, if the star is 1.4 the mass of the sun, it will end as a white dwarf. And if it's more than the sun's mass, it will collapse into a neutron star, ending its life as a supernova explosion. However, most stars are low in mass, so therefore, most stars become white dwarfs rather than supernovas. And now you know the life of a star.
I hope you've enjoyed this video and have learned what stellar evolution is. In this video, we went over what stellar evolution is, how to measure it, and how the H-R diagram is used to find the difference and the similarities between the different stars. Remember, stellar evolution is the process in which a star changes over time, and the H-R diagram compares luminosity and temperature, two of the most important characteristics. We've also gone over how stars are born, how they live, and how they eventually deplete all of their fuel and die. We've gone over sun pulsations, which occur because the material inside the sun is constantly on the move. This movement can produce pressure waves that travel through the sun and cause its surface to vibrate. How they are found, we've also gone over how they are found, and we've also shown you what they sound like. Last but not least, we've gone over how a star starts off as a white dwarf, goes on to becoming a main sequence, and ends up being giants and supergiants, and eventually dying and repeating this process again and again and again. We've also gone over what happens in each of these stages and explained what it's like to be in each one of them. Thank you for watching, and have a happy and merry and beautiful holiday.